Good afternoon. Can you hear me? No. The technology's holding me back. Mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey. Good afternoon, everyone. I know y'all just ate, and everybody might be feeling a little sleepy. But good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. That's how I like it. Welcoming you back to Seeding Justice Beyond the Bars 2023. Our next conversation will be a fabulous one, Seeding Justice, Possibilities, Tensions, and Contradictions. Before we get started, again, just want to remind everybody to do what you can to keep everyone safe and put your mask on, except when you are eating. And I am going to turn it over to our moderator, Martina Kartman of Collective Justice.
Thank you all so much. I'm doing this for Mimi. I'm hella honored to be here. I feel so excited to be with this panel. I genuinely cannot contain my fangirl and my joy for being with this group, so I'm not going to try. Thank you all for being here and for being in conversation with me today. Thank you, Mimi Kim, Danielle Sered, Justice Yazzie, and Kumi Owusu. It's Kume's birthday today. I can't sing for the life of me, but we're gonna sing happy birthday. Will someone else start? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Thank you for being here on your birthday, Kumi.
Thank you for sharing this time and space with me. I'm very honored to be here on my birthday. I couldn't imagine a better way to celebrate it than with community, so thank you so much.
Appreciate you. And Cameron, I want to thank you. I want to reiterate what Cheryl Fairbanks said this morning. I called you multiple times and emailed. I was like, what am I supposed to do on Saturday? What are we talking about? And you met my nerves with calm and grace and clarity every time. So I appreciate you so much. And I appreciate everybody who brought this panel together. Thank you. And thank you all for being here on your Saturday. At the same time, as I was writing like the setup for this, I felt like my heart break a little bit about so many of the people that have taught me everything I know about this work. So many people who are not with us today, who can't be here in this room, people who have lost their lives to violence, people who are locked up behind bars across this country. And I want to make sure that as we have this conversation, that we center them in this space. I think that, especially when we're talking about these traditions, it's just important to hold our loved ones at the front and center, and to call them into the room and call them into the conversation. So I want to do that as well. And that is really what organized me to be in this movement in the first place. After my own experiences escaping violence and entangled in the carceral system, these traditions saved me. Like, insight saved me. And critical resistance saved me. And Life Comes From It saved me, and Circle saved me. And so I'm here for that reason, because this work invites us into healing that is abundant. It invites us into a healing that moves us toward dignity, toward one another, and toward something deeply affirming. And it moves us fundamentally into freedom. And so we're here to build off the conversations that happened this morning, to get into the nitty-gritty of it all, and hopefully to find some hope and possibility in our movements. So we're going to start out with some introductions. I'll ask each of you to just briefly introduce yourself and maybe share with the room how you come to your ways and your work.
If I may, I would love to introduce myself because I'm not here by myself, and I think we're all here with family as well. So shout out to that. But so yes, my name is Kumi Owusu. Professionally, I'm the ultimate creative with a K. I'm here with H.O.L.L.A. and my Yonkers community as well, which will soon be H.O.L.L.A because we are expanding, we are love. So shout out to Marcus and my mother. And I'm here in my capacity as a lived community person, you know? Born in the Bronx, 2 Ghanaian immigrants, so I'm first generation, and I've had the privilege to move through a unique experience in New York City. So moved from the Bronx to Mount Vernon to Yonkers. And Yonkers is now the 3rd largest city in New York State. So this conversation is personal because I know so many people that it impacts. And I've been journeying now with H.O.L.L.A for 2 to 3 years. We're currently in our 24-month process, the 2nd stage, which is Ella Baker, sustainability, transformational organizing portal. Stop, right? Okay. It's a long process for a lot of information, and I'm honored to be here with all of I have a mini altar here, if you don't mind. Altars was actually the first thing we studied the first day of our internship, and it brought a new meaning to, oh, my body's an altar, like our minds and our inner is an altar as well. So this is a collection of what is within me, what I'm carrying with me in this conversation. Yeah, thanks for allowing me to share.
Yat-A. Ya. Yat-A. Ya means everything. At-A means good. Rather than hello. Thank you for the privilege to speak with you this afternoon, along with some fine presenters here. I'm from the Navajo Nation, from the Southwest. Our population is like 400,000 Navajo people. And we live in a 27,000 square miles acre of land. Extension to Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. So it is our land still. So I'm here to, share with you my experience, what I like best, peacemaking, and to give a lot of emphasis on the culture, Navajo way of life, and the language. English is my second language. Navajo is my first language, which is a good thing that happened when I was born. So I'm retired from the bench as judge and Chief Justice for serving as a judge for almost 20 years. And now I teach law, and I'm full-time peacemaking, teaching, and I enjoy doing that. So I want to share with you what I do with it in terms of my leadership to the people and my devotion to the people. Thank you.
Good afternoon, y'all. I'm Danielle Sarid. I am super honored to be here with you among people who have been my guiding lights for decades in this work. I've had the privilege of serving as the executive director of Common Justice since we started. I'm from Chicago, so like my ways to this work come through some of the peacemaking traditions that were held by Black leadership in the streets of Chicago that didn't call themselves restorative justice, but were that. I come out of the harm reduction movements that gave shelter to my father and I as he struggled with an addiction to crack cocaine for most of his life. May he now rest in peace. I come from all sorts of teachings, people like Fania Davis, who we heard earlier today, Cheryl Graves, who is inscribed in all of our hearts, people who don't know that. You learn from someone who learned from Cheryl, like all of us can trace an origin to Cheryl. From Kathy Boudin, who is here with us in this space and who I keep thinking I see out of the corner of my eye all day. I have seen like 6 of Kathy Boudin. So any of y'all who look like Kathy, if you wouldn't mind cutting your hair or something, it would help me feel a little less, but maybe it's best. Maybe keep it just as it is. So we're reminded that she's always here with us. And I come to this work really, I come as a survivor. I come as somebody who knows my humanity depends on ending mass incarceration in our lifetime. And I come knowing that like those two like tributaries lead to the same stream. And as long as we pretend they're separate, we're not finding our way anywhere. So I come to this place where those things come together with huge gratitude to all of you who are here too.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mimi Kim. I'm here from Los Angeles, which is a hella rainy right now. So from the Bay, from many places. When I was preparing to come here, I really felt like, sometimes you, at least for me, I prepare a lot. And sometimes I just know that you're going to go into a space where people are going to move you. So why prepare? Because you don't know what's going to happen. I felt that way when we were together in our Zoom room and talking and meeting up with people. Well, they're new. Kumi's new to me. But I heard about H.O.L.A so long. And Corey from H.O.L.A was just contacting me so much that I was always up on what y'all were doing. So I feel very honored to be on this panel with you. So many people I know learned so much and have so much respect for you, Justice Yazzie. So thank you for sharing this space with me. I feel very, very humbled by being here. Danielle is like, wow. How many quotes come from Danielle Serret's book? And really cool things. A new friend over here, Martina, so thank you so much. I have now new teachers that I just listened to today. I am just, I don't even have words. For me, I'm just emerging to be in in-person spaces that are this large. I don't know about the rest of you, but this is the second one. The first one was last week. Richard is here from Ahimsa, and it was so amazing to see somebody in person that I haven't had that experience for so long. And I got so much out of that, just having those, we sit and have coffee and talk about something that you're not going to talk about in a Zoom meeting. Maybe something on the chat, but that's usually, maybe saying something nasty about somebody else in the Zoom, but okay. Not sacred language, y'all know what I mean. But coming here today and just walking into the space, getting little texts and emails from people that were like, oh, I thought you were going to be here. I was like, I had no idea. Mike Milton is somebody that I met over Zoom, and to see Mike and give a big hug and get an even bigger hug, I mean, it's, blessings, really blessings to be here. We are blessed, and I am just gonna do the best I can with my humble self, with hoping I can share something that might be useful to the movement, to the work we're trying to do, to liberation. And I'm just gonna trust that the energy from these seats where amazing people have been sitting is gonna emanate from me. So I do wanna say a shout out to Success Stories here. April, oh, there you are. April and Chantel, it's an amazing group of folks out in California and other places that have been doing the kind of liberatory work we're doing here, and I'm just learning so much from them. Thank you for letting me be part of your organization. And Insight, 2000 is when some of us got together. Some of you know the work of Insight. I think it's been influential in the rise of abolition and abolition feminism. And I feel so grateful for that group of lovelies that I still in contact with and get energy. And we come up and scheme shit all the time. So thank you all. I'm going to end there. And there's so many other people, but I'm going to stop right there. Thank you.
So we're going to start with a question of origin and lineage and try to do a little bit of tracing back on the lineage of Indigenous peacemaking, restorative justice, transformative justice, and healing justice. And Justice Yazzie, can we start with you?
I have a story for you that addresses the origin or the emergence of peacemaking. And I've read articles and books, and sometimes when you're trying to find the source that will answer the question, it gets to be frustrating. But one thing that's always very convenient is to have the availability of elders. And especially when they talk to you in Navajo and they say, where did they come from? How do people come back into the good way of life? And somebody said to me, when the beginning, during creation time, the universe was in a chaotic state. Everything was in disarray. And the earth and the sun were at each other in confrontation. And as a result, the world was, there was a lot of imbalance everywhere. There was no water, no rain. The air was always blowing, as it does when it gets really frustrated with life here and begins to destroy. And then it was too hot. Everything went on and on and on until one day, at one point, the sun said to the earth, can we make a life? Can we establish a permanent relationship? So the earth said, that's a possibility. Only if you, treat me like the way I treat you. Talk to me like the way I talk to you. Think of me the way I think of you. She went on and on. And then, so they both agreed. And that was when peace was born, when the chaos went face to face with peace, and they were able to deal with those two forces to come up with a solution that became permanent. And this is where the sun and the earth established relationship, something that we use in peacemaking. So whenever we have peacemaking, the question is, what is peacemaking for the sake of this particular solution? And always people say, the relatives are here. They're willingly, come and go in a circle, not line by line the way we're sitting. There's more connection. There's more feeling of oneness. Is what we need to have our peacemaking today, is what they would say. And so peacemaking is an opportunity for people to talk with each other. And I used to hear one time I had a woman walking down the street, and she said, I asked her, how did the divorce proceeding go with you? She said, she went like this. She didn't say anything. And I got the message. And she said, only if I had the opportunity to say something, I would ask why, the question why. Why did you do this to me? That's all I want to know. So peacemaking is something that that began way, way back with the holy people. And so some elders would tell you a story. You think the holy people are really holy? He says, let me tell you, holy people, they made all kinds of mistakes, unimaginable mistake. But the only thing is that what they have is the power to acknowledge their mistake, the power to fix their mistake, something that we can't do. So the origin of peacemaking is what the holy people put in place for the benefit of the future, which means us. So when we teach peacemaking, we use songs and prayers to teach the people a feeling of oneness. And that sometimes, you know, we were so used to the court system these days. And I remember from the Treaty of 1868, the United States did not want to sign. And unless we agreed to give up everything we have, unless we agree that, you know, the children, our children, would be subject to be educated, to be civilized, to be forced into the mainstream, is what we still face today. But even then, the voices, the teaching of the holy people, you can still hear it. The wind is still talking, the water is still flowing, and the fire. Whenever we get together, we say we need to build a fire right now in our midst, and we need to put the water here, because those are the elements that we looked upon to teach us the things we need to know. And these are our ancestors. So when they teach peacemaking, they use the language. Means that everybody's entitled to live to the fullest. And that's the reason for peacemaking. And the reason for peacemaking is not to blame each other, to point fingers at each other, but to say, you know, let's look at what we did to each other. How much harm did we do to each other? So sometimes lawyers, you know, get involved, and lawyers always push the fact among my people that whenever there's harm, it always means money as a form of relief. But I heard this one woman, she said, I don't care for the payment. All I want is how are you going to make up, you know, return me to myself, my dignity, my pride. So that's you know, that's teaching from the holy people are saying, look what the sun and the earth were able to do to establish a relationship. That is something that is very much a part of peacemaking. When you do peacemaking and when you get to the conclusion, don't expect perfection. And one woman said, like a window just shattered. If you want to do peacemaking to make it back to where it was, you can't. So anything that you see becomes a part of your experience. So I was I really enjoy the session here.
Thank you, Justice Yazzie. Mimi?
Okay, you have to all feel sorry for me that I have to follow Justice Yazzie on that question. So I'm gonna try to let his wisdom and the wisdom of his holy people shine on me as I talk a little bit about a trajectory that is not starting with the sun and the moon, or the sun and the earth necessarily, but something much more contemporary for me. I actually had been working in the anti-violence movement, working in shelters, working in sexual assault crisis centers since the late 1980s. By the time I got there, calling the police was pretty much a done deal. That's what you did. Maybe even 10 years earlier, not necessarily, because they wouldn't have come out. Still, they might not come out, and you certainly may not want them to come out. But at the time, it was a done deal that that's what we as feminists do. We say, maybe we're not crazy about the police, but we do say, we're not going to get engaged with somebody who caused harm because that's too dangerous for us. You might live with them. You might see them every day. They might be your brother, your father, your sister. You are in their midst. They're your family. But we have this pure position that we care so much about safety that we're not going to get involved. And in fact, if you ask us to get involved, we're either going to say, oh, you're coddling somebody, you're colluding with violence, or that you should, you're not a real feminist. This is what people were saying. And so I felt very bothered by that, right? And yet I was working in shelters and working with crisis lines for so long, and I continually did ask people who called, did you, and this was working at a battered women's shelter in San Francisco, where I worked for 10 years, did you ever call the police? Did you ever try to leave? And not that those are bad questions, because they can be good questions to ask. But the reason, the underlying kind of assumption behind those was that's the best thing to do. That if you're going to stay, things are only going to get worse because we don't have any ways to intervene. And if you're going to do family ways and things that people were already talking about today, we don't condone that. We don't even recognize it. We don't even see that as an intervention. That's dangerous. I'm not going to condone that. Are you following me? In terms of this is the training that I had, and this is honestly the training I gave for a long time. I said, have you ever called the police? Not that we thought it was great, but because we weren't going to intervene. And we were telling people you shouldn't either. It's too dangerous, even if the person's right next to you and you're living with them every single day. So why is it that we have become supposedly the experts on looking at domestic violence and sexual violence, and we don't have one thing to say to you about what you could do for a loved one right now, except leave or call the police? That's it? Yes. There was something so profoundly wrong about it, and yet I was surrounded by that. It was so ingrained as a way of thinking. It was so ingrained as a way of thinking that that's what we do because we care. That's what we do because people don't change. And we all know we have loved ones. We're not just talking, and we are survivors. We are the people who cause harm. We have to do something profoundly different. And I could not believe how many years I went and could not find anybody, or so few people, that agreed that there was something profoundly wrong. I was there in 1994 when we passed Violence Against Women Act as part of the crime bill. I didn't even know it was being passed. And when I found out, I was so just honestly kind of dumbfounded. I could not believe that we had made a deal to pass the Violence Against Women Act as part of a crime bill. And I couldn't believe that nobody was saying anything. So that was the other thing. This is a slow move then towards having these conversations with people that I know and love. And did we have them at a conference like this? No. We had them in the bathroom. We had them at the hotel room afterwards. We had them somewhere else because that was not going to be something that was brought into the room. And that is the slow move towards, first of all, really giving props to Critical Resistance that had their conference in 1998 that I had the good fortune to attend. It was so powerful. There was so much, obviously people had already been doing movement, it didn't start there, but there's something about gathering and like gathering in person and having this kind of, it's like the right time, it's the right energy. And things took off for me, and things also spilled over or joined together with those of us who were part of the anti-violence movement. Said, this is not my feminism. This is not my community. This is not what my community wants. They don't want that, and why is it the only thing we're offering? And became, I think, the genesis for what became another space, organizing space that has been important for me, and I think many other people, which is Insight in 2000. In Insight in 2000, we named state violence, the violence of police, as a form of violence as critically central as was interpersonal violence, gender-based violence, sexual violence, domestic violence, child sexual abuse, everything that we have been talking about. Those things are critically serious. We need to deal with them, and we have heard over and over today, this restorative justice or dismantling the police is not about we don't care about violence, because we care so much. We care so much about creating healthy communities that can actually prevent violence. We want to create communities where somebody actually who harms somebody isn't going to be like, I don't want to tell anybody, you better not tell anybody because then I'm going to be locked up. But rather, I want to tell somebody because I know somebody's going to listen to me and they're going to hold me and they're going to say, yes, that's wrong, but I love you. And there's something that we can do about it. I think the thank you. I think the practices that we heard about earlier today and continue to hear about of these circles that people are having right now, that people are actually making this kind of change happen, and they are basing it on whatever indigenous might mean to somebody. For those of us who have been taken from our original lands or had to flee, which includes me as a Korean American, I have been torn away from some of those things. So I know what I'm trying to do is in my practice as an abolitionist, which I didn't claim that name before, nor did I use the word transformative justice because I didn't even want to use the word justice. I think like justice is so fraught as a term that like I just said, let's just call it like, I started a group called Creative Interventions. We're going to be creative and we're going to do something. You know, that's it. And we're not calling the cops. And probably we're not even going to call a crisis line because they're going to tell us not to do that. So I think what I've seen then since that 23 years, since 2000, is this, you know, it's catching fire, right? People, you're already doing it. You discovered that you had already been doing it, but somebody told you not to. We have been actually even told that it might, in some cases, be against the law for us to bring people together. And I feel like for myself that some of us had lost the skills to even do a thing like that because it was so much easier to pick up the phones, call 911, or easier to do nothing at all and pretend like, I don't see it. So over the last now a couple of decades, we have a room full of people who I know so many of you are practitioners and have so much wisdom. And you know, can't wait I want to go to all the workshops, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I'm gonna write all the names down, then I'm gonna call you afterwards, or we're gonna keep doing this. I mean, what's happening right now is I'm coming from a lot of despair about this world. I wake up every day feeling not very hopeful. Today, for the first time for I don't know how long, feeling like we are here in this room and we are doing something towards liberation. And it's the only way it's gonna happen is for us to keep learning from each other, keep feeding each other, keep affirming each other, keep loving ourselves and each other, and build. So I really am grateful that we have the space here, and that thank you for allowing me to talk today. Thanks, Cam, and Kumi for coming up with this 12 years ago. This is beautiful.
Unless you want to answer.
Oh, I think we want.
Oh, okay. I would love to. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so just move up here. Thank you both for sharing. I was able to stream the live stream of the past panels, and it's so meaningful to have a conversation that's been ongoing, not just in this room today, but in all our respected lives, right? So, yeah, I think everything I'm about to say is going to be received very well. I would love everyone to just bear in mind I'm very much a student in this space. I didn't know about healing justice, not even last year, right? So literally studying all of this actively and our living ancestors as well. So being in H.O.L.L.A, we stand on a legacy that is active. It's not just our living ancestors such as Dr. Corey, Black God, Altoro, A-Rox, Brother Lab, where you at? Hey, okay, we're alive, not just our living ancestors, but the ones that have passed, right? Larry White, Eddie Ellis, right? And yes, taking in for them. And they stood on the Green Haven think tank, right? Which comes from the Prison Rights Action Movement, which comes from Attica uprising, right? Which was the first uprising against the system in that way in New York in 1971, which comes from the Student Action Movement. No, which comes from the Black Power movement, which comes from the Student Action Movement. So I'm really from a grassroots lifestyle. Like this is like grassroots movement work that has survived generations and ongoing. So I'm really grateful to be in this space to share that energy and to listening to everyone. It's really coming full circle with our most recent cohort, right? We have Imani and Kima. Empress, you know what I mean? Saleh, Nemo, even the people that aren't here. We are the newest cohort to introduce and stand on the non-traditional approach. No longer criminal, because criminal justice does not exist, but human and healing justice, right? This is the revised version from 1971 that states and articulates why we are experiencing institutions the way that we are, right? So I have a couple notes here, but healing justice is not just needed when a crime happens, but it's needed every day, right? We have to heal with our teachers. We have to heal with our families. We have to heal with people that we walk across the street with. We have to heal with our hospitals, with our elected officials in the state. And as a working definition for healing justice, and this is from the Sacred Conversations, sharing our journeys of healing justice with the field of critical youth and mental health, right? So it's a working definition because struggle is active, right? Struggle does not stop. So it's a working definition that encompasses a community-led response. It has to be community-specific to interrupt, transform, and intervene on an individual and collective trauma to sustain our emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, psychic, environmental well-being. Healing justice is an emergent process to address trauma, grief, crisis, and violence, both historical and current. It's a political strategy and a spiritual framework, rooted in history and legacies of survival, ancestral traditions, and practices. It's a cultural strategy to honor our traditions and create models of holistic care and safety in our relationships and our conditions. It's also a political strategy to decriminalize communal practices and traditions outside of state and seeks to end the persecution and practitioners who have community-led strategies and structures of our care for our collective survival and resilience. And finally, it's a movement-building strategy, right? To sustain and fortify the imagination and the bodies of our organizers and movement-building organizations. The most current modern history of the term healing justice was actually for us in this room, the people that heal or hurt. We're doing the work and figuring out that traditional practices for self-care do not align with our non-traditional lives. So we're still suffering while we're trying to heal, not just ourselves, but our communities. So healing justice is more so that individual concentration of like you have to heal your inner self, and then all of that work is tied to and reflected in the NTA, which is stems from an Afrocentric worldview, and that's important because when we talk about rituals and indigenous practices, we have to be specific not just with our ancestors, but where they came from, right? So we can recognize the native lands in this country and the native people of this country and what they did and how they were prosecuted for living their life, but also is reflective of the greater population of people, right? Because the issue that we're tackling, which is not just the criminal punishment system, but the global prison industrial complex is happening everywhere. So if in my community or in the 7 neighborhood study, right, which states, why is it that Black and brown people make up 25 to 28% of the population in New York State, but 85% of the prison population? And 75% of that 85% come from the same 7 neighborhoods in New York City, right? So let's visualize it. Oh, we don't have to. We are the island, okay? This is New York City. And those numbers are from 97. The most recent numbers indicate 10 neighborhoods is a growing issue. New York City, if 10 neighborhoods are targeted to fill prisons throughout the state, where are they funneling out through? Westchester County, right? That's Yonkers and Mount Vernon. We have to expand our analysis because it's not just the state, now it's the country. And the US is we incarcerate the most people on this earth. The longest political prisoner is H.O.L.L.A. McGee, and he is held freedom all for real. He is held in California, and he's been there for over 50 years. So healing justice not just says how do we approach offenders or criminals of today, but of the past. I am working. All my efforts is to definitely get out free H.O.L.L.A. McGee, right? Because what are the policies and practices still keeping him in prison, right? So the 7 neighborhood study collectivizes our experiences as one that we were designed to experience. So we have to make that division of, okay, we are non-traditional in a traditional setting. What is our non-traditional way of being? And we get there through our process that we have to call it the 5 R's, right? And the 5 R's stands for the 5 stages of reconciliation or resurrection. But as much as it's a communal practice, it's an individual practice. I have to recognize that the state alienates all of us in all these different ways. I then have to not reconcile, but I then have to recognize reconciliation, resurrection, redeem, or redemption. Responsibility. There we go. There's a process to the point of working together with the community that I have to go through myself with the understanding, with a shared historical perspective, right? If we all have these different analyses, which makes sense because we have different cultures, but we've been attacked the same way, right? We're the leaders in the work. We can surely see which laws and policies historically have attacked us and how to counter that. And that's why earlier panels were so powerful, because communities have been doing it. When you get to historical perspective, you not just see how we've been attacked, but how we've actively healed ourselves, and how the state has gotten stronger in their oppression because of how they studied how we heal ourselves. So we have to journey that together within our respective communities. So this work can not just minimize and reduce the prison industrial complex in our country, but in the world. Because when they say it's a new form of slavery, they're not kidding. Prisoners are working for less than $1 a day, and they're maintaining the prison. They're not just working in the streets and in construction. They're maintaining their prisons. There are now policies such as pay to stay, where they're basically paying rent to be imprisoned, right? What else? They have to get a GED program. What was once free, through the Green Haven thing, take another part of the legacy that we stand on. What was once free and successful now costs $25 a month. Nothing to us, right? But when you make less than $1 a day, you now have to wager, what am I gonna eat? And how am I gonna live in this institution that's not built for me and gain my education? And even if you're not in prison, welfare. I'm not sure if it's a lasting stipulation, but if you are on welfare, you could not have a bachelor's degree. So healing justice not just attacks the state, but all forms in which the state attacks us. And we have to really work together so that when we do approach the state, we're doing so with our communities, right? Because it's really our stories of our lives that make the impact of whatever work that we're doing. And with that, I'll close.
I can be brief. The experience that I've been having in terms of growth of peacemaking, there's some certain contradictions and that causes the tension. So I told you we have 400,000 Navajos. So, I mean, United States has really done well in terms of getting ourselves to become more embracing the adversarial style of justice and getting away from what we had, what I just told you about the holy people. So, in my position, I think what ways can we find more of a beneficial to see, you know, Navajos when they have a legal issue, that they come out with a satisfied outcome. So surely the court system that we have that operates like state and federal court doesn't do that. And then we look at the Navajo peacemaking that has roots, philosophy. So one time it just dawned on me that, you know, maybe it's the way we think in terms of what the Europeans think about their approach to problem solving. Very specific. We learned that in law school, IRAC method. But when you look at the Navajo, you look at something different. You look at what the universe have done, how they managed to gain peace. And then you look at the elements that go with it to help to bring that, you know, solution and make it permanent. And these are not man-made. These are made by the holy people. So when you look at that, then you say, well, what's the approach for problem solving? Well, you could say it's very simple. You know, it's when you have a legal problem, you can use your mind, and you can put your mind into action to say, what does my mind tell me about the issue? It doesn't matter what the case might be. So the next thing to do is just say, how can I, you know, use my mind and my planning of the issue? How can I implement something so that the people can feel that there is resolution at hand? And that's the kind of court system we need to have. The word, at the end word is si, Hassan. Si means satisfied. Hassan is what you think of it. So maybe some of them, you said, what are you talking about? Well, you heard about yin and yang, right? In Navajo, we have a similar approach. We call it H.O.L.L.A. What that means is that you have one thing facing the other. I have one person telling me that everything in life comes in twos. And what he meant is that, you know, you have on the one hand, something that's of order, something of chaos. If you look at, you know, any solution from that standpoint and say, what are the underlying cause of the bad energy? What does the good way offer? So in between is where we are. In between is, he said, there's this is what we see of a law that emphasize order. This is what we see, the bad energy doing this thing on people. So a lot of, when we say talking things out, that's where we spend our time, get the people to talk out more. The more they talk, the more they, you know, can understand their problems. I just wanted to introduce that, and that's causing a lot of tension. And one of the things I want to say too is that, you know, when you try to bring the European court model and the Navajo model, you see there's some conflicts, tension. For example, we don't have word for right. There's none. So if Navajos are to adopt the court system, we don't know what right means. But that doesn't mean that, Navajos don't have rights if they choose to use our own, system to resolve resolution. What it means is that what takes place of that right is the duty and responsibility. Remember, what's her name? Milani? Yeah. She said, she said, peacemaking provides for a high sense of responsibility. That's what hits the nail on the head. Not right, but the responsibility. Responsibility of those who are in charge of, running the Navajo peacemaking. They have the responsibility. So today we have to kind of put these two together, the adversarial and the peacemaking, are the two things that go face to face. And it's up to us to say, what benefit what are the plus and the minus on both, to give us a better idea, to say this is how the peacemaking in the modern world, using the Navajo fundamental law as a guide to reach solutions. So I just wanted to talk about that.
Thank you. Thank you for moving us into this question of contradiction. And peacemaking and restorative justice, transformative justice, and healing justice have so much of the same essence, and in so many ways are fighting for the same freedoms. And there's also distinct lineages, as you all shared, and some distinct values. And on a day-to-day, like when we're not talking theory, when we're in the pragmatic, not sexy decision-making of how we do this work in the conditions that we live in, sometimes we get stuck in the muck, right? And there are contradictions and there are tensions. A couple nights ago, I was at the event celebrating the life of Martin Sostre, and Laura Whitehorn said, when you're trying to support, I'm gonna paraphrase because I didn't get the exact quote, but when you're trying to uproot state-sanctioned violence and oppression, we're always confronted with principled issues. And if we wanna build movements that get us really, really free, we have to engage in principled struggle together.
That's right.
It's critical that we deepen into and understand these movements and that we actually grapple with the questions that they pose. And so, Danielle, I'm gonna start with you. But I'd love for y'all to speak to the underlying causes of contradictions and tensions that you see in our movements, and what challenges that you see frustrating sort of the growth of our movements.
Thank you. It's hard to switch from listening to talking with the folks beside me, so bear with me as I get my talking voice back. First I want to say that tensions and contradictions we're going to be in them forever. In the world we envision, and when we win abolition, when the world we are moving toward is ours, there will be tensions and contradictions then too. And so I think the aim is not to be without tensions and contradictions. The aim is to be able to be with them together, and to be with them and still be in our values, and to be with them and still hold each other in dignity. And so, like the eradication of tension and contradictions, I think is some real white shit, right? Like the idea, like a flattening of like how we somehow, the epitome of things is for us each to become identical to one another. It's ridiculous and very dangerous. And so I want to say, like, I love tensions and contradictions. And the question is, like, how do we hold those together, right? Like, what is our capacity? And I think about, I love your opening story, right? Like, what if holiness is the ability to repair the damage we inevitably do, right? And that means holiness is not purity. Holiness is not purity, right? Our righteousness is not purity. And so it is never my aspiration to be poor. Because I understand I am a white woman in America. That is not available to me. Like, I can't be pure, right? Like, you can't touch a dollar that is not soaked with Black and Indigenous blood. You can't stand on land that hasn't been, like, wrought from pain, right? There is nowhere pure to be. So the question for me is, like, how do we become righteous in a way that is honest and rooted in a land that has, like, both beauty and pain everywhere? And we are we are raised in this world, we are wounded by this world, we are going to do shit to each other that comes from that, right? That comes from our pain, from our parents' pain, from our ancestors' pain, from each other's pain. We are not going to be perfect with one another in this lifetime. And so that is also, to me, not the aspiration, right? Like the aspiration as people who are flawed, who are imperfect, who have been harmed, like how do we build the strength to continue to love one another in that state? Which I think, at least for my lifetime, the lifetime of my child will persist. I don't know if it's permanent or not. I'm humble enough to be like, I can't see all the way to the 7th generation. I try and do my best with as clear as I can envision it, right? And so I want to talk about 2 specific contradictions in our movements, but also say there's a million everywhere, right? And like let us harvest them, right? Like they're not serving us in the ground. Let's like gather them and eat them together. In the spirit of seeding justice. So one is that restorative justice, we talk about its roots in indigenous tradition. Indigenous tradition doesn't call it restorative justice. Restorative, I think I'm a restorative justice expert, which is always very weird to me. I hate the term restorative justice, so it's awkward. And it's because I'm like, common justice, we work on serious violence. And I think the idea of restoration is the idea that like before this thing happened, we were good, right? We were fine, and this bad thing happened and made us broken in some way, and if we could but repair it and look, if like the shattered window could look crystal and clear again, then we would have restored it. Like we're some old building facade being made to look like it did in the 1800s. Like restore to what? Like to 1491 and a half? Like when do we go back to? And like who among us has been hurt only once? Right? And like restore to when we are babies. Like we're grown. We can't restore to when we're babies. We can't just like babble and poop ourselves all day, right? Like there's not a rewind that works, right? Like there's a mending that works. There's a way of moving forward that works, right? But the notion of restorative justice, I think, very much of that when that emerges in the 70s here, it emerges with mostly white leadership. It emerges adjacent to the criminal legal system. It emerges mostly in white community and almost exclusively for nonviolent crime, right? So like the first video I saw from the International Institute of Restorative Justice, which restorative practices, I hope they've taken it from their website, called Burning Bridges, is about this small town where these guys burned a bridge when they were drunk, and then like it affected the whole town, and how are they gonna fix the bridge? And like if you burn a bridge in your town, you should fix it, like no doubt. Like I'm not like anti-bridge or pro-bridge burning, but I'm like, that's not the problem I've been trying to solve, and nor are these the tools that I'm looking for, right? And so I think we have to. So when I first planned common justice, we called it participatory justice, and then everyone told me it was too many syllables, but I said it was honest. And I think about Eddie Ellis in this room. Thank you for bringing him in here, because I remember those of you who were at the National Hire Conference, and must have been 2005. Eddie Ellis started it, and he said, in this room, we're not going to say felon, we're not going to say convict, we're not going to say all these things. And he said, and some of you will say, we're going to say formerly incarcerated people, and some of you will say, like, that doesn't roll off my tongue. And he said, it makes me feel human. And just silenced her and like left us there for a minute. And we were like, and not one person said those words for the next 2 days, right? And so, and like any of us who don't say those words have a lineage to Eddie. And so I think that the restorative justice, we have to be honest that those practices, to what everybody has been doing it all the time. Even white folks, like Stonehenge, they set up in a circle. Like even we can find our way back to it, when we don't want to throw people away, when we decide we want something other than to destroy those who have hurt us, we figure out what to do. We sit together, we talk to each other. Sometimes we realize we should talk one at a time. We realize the benefit of eldership, right? And we figure out how to structure that. And so like these practices are natural to us. And the criminal legal system, I agree with you, understands that the naturalness of those practices threatens the power of everything that would extract from us our labor at the price of our humanity, right? The naturalness is dangerous to everything. And so it inserts things that will disrupt those natural things, right? And so we're not inventing anything. If you're inventing maybe someone here is going to invent something. I'm not inventing anything. Let me speak. Common justice, we're not inventing anything. We are trying to remove the barriers to the things that are always innate in all of us, in every one of us. And And so I think we have to be honest that restorative justice in this country has been system aligned, has been largely white, has been often very carceral, especially as it comes to how it relates to violence, has been like, you get a second chance, but certainly not a third, right? Like, has been infused with those things, right? And has not been aligned with the movement to end mass incarceration for the most part. And in 2013, Dr. Fania Davis, who we heard from today, Dr. Morris Jenkins, and others made this intervention at the National Conference of Community and Restorative Justice, National Association. It's got a long acronym. It doesn't spell a word, so it's hard to remember. But those conferences have been small, nearly all white. And that year, they made it was in Toledo, Ohio. I've been there once for this. And they brought, everybody came. And the subject, it was called Restorative Justice and Race, Keeping It Real. And the keynote speakers were Tim Wise, Erica Huggins, Angela Davis. Like, yeah, you should have been there. And there was a whole track about race, and there was huge division among the conference about whether this was a good thing or bad thing. But they also got a ton of scholarship money raised to bring a ton of Black and brown folks doing this work into that space. And the takeover, the transformation of that conference has persisted. Like, you should go to it now because it is what it has become. But it was one of the first sites of integration. Like, I was going to all the restorative justice conferences and all the ending mass incarceration conferences, and I had no friends at both. Right? Like, I could have gone by different names and no one would have caught me, right? Like, no friends at both. These movements were not aligned. And so I think we have to be honest as we look to restorative justice as part of the remedy for mass incarceration. We have to be really mindful about that origin story and how it persists and how to guard against it. And we also have to be really mindful of the part of us that therefore tries to throw it away. The same way we throw people away, the same way we throw garbage away, the same way we are taught that things are disposable if they're not perfect, right? And so instead for me, I'm like, that's why I'm like, call it what you want to call it. Creative interventions is a great name. Like, what are you going, that's why I stand by participatory justice, by the way. You know, like, what are you going to, because you come, you curse someone out, you don't heal, but you participated. It's honest, right? And so I think there's like that first part, right, which is like, how do we tell the truth about that? And as we look to restorative justice, which I do believe is one of our most powerful tools for the transformation of harm. We do it for serious violence at Common Justice with extraordinary outcomes all the time, not because we're amazing, though our team is, but because people are amazing and can do it, and we're pretty good. Like, what's it? Is it? It's not a linebacker. Who just takes a hit so the guy can run? Football people. Work with me. Work with me. Yeah. Thank you, a lineman. See, look, we learn together. I'm like, I want to be that dude, right? I want, like, our participants have what they need. They know where they need to go, right? They got the ball, they are the runners, and we just stand there with the force of the state coming at us, and we take all the power we have. For some of us, that's like degrees, it's whiteness, it's education, it's whatever, and we just stand there with whatever makes us big, and we just take hits as well as we can so that people can get to their liberation, right? And so I think as we think about that contradiction, I think we hold that contradiction with love, right? We hold it with possibility. I don't mean we throw restorative justice away because it's done all these things that weren't right. It's been used in ways that aren't right, and that we root back in the part that's right. And then the other contradiction and tension that I want to talk about is just this proximity to the state, which I think will be a good handoff to Mimi. I expect will be a comfortable transition there. Which is we at Common Justice do this as diversion work, right? And so we are the last stop between, like, when there is nothing left on the road but prison, we stand there, and that's where we get people out. And in order to do that, we stand next to prosecutors, right? And we work in relationship with prosecutors because it's the place we've decided to situate our work, right? Not because it's like EMTs who resuscitate people on the sidewalk. You're not like, you don't go up to them and be like, why do you do this on the sidewalk? Don't you know sidewalks are dirty? And you're like, well, because this is where people fell out, right? And so, like, we are situated in the criminal legal system because that is where people are, not because we believe that is the location that is appropriate for healing, transformation, reconciliation, any of it. But that proximity to the state is complicated. And I remember somebody a few years ago called me and told me that someone was talking shit about Common Justice. Can you believe it? And I said, what did they say? And they said that you don't do pure restorative justice because you're tied to the state. And I said, and when did they talk shit? Of course it's not pure. Like, of course the proximity of the state is distorting, right? Of course it's present. Like, its ever-present threat to revoke someone's freedom is distorting, is in there. Like, I don't know where is pure, but it's not our house, right? We don't pretend that. But again, the fact that it's not pure does not make it not righteous, right? And so I think one of the things we have to, sometimes I think about it like if what my child needed to heal was in the middle of a field of shit strewn with glass, there is nothing in me that would hesitate before walking through that field to get what he needed. If something that another person's child need to heal was in the middle of a field of shit strewn with glass, I would not hesitate before walking through that field. And so, like, there's a reason I wear all black most of the time, right? Like, we are, like, the criminal legal system is a field of shit strewn with glass. And yet, if that is where people are, if that is where we have to go for people to be liberated, then we will stand there. And we will not expect to come out with our white boots clean at the end. But we will do that because of the conditions we understand. But we have to also never be deceived into believing that that means the best way to walk and the best way to get healing is with shit and glass, right? We also have to not internalize that that criminal legal system is a contributor to the healing, but rather that it's a necessary location of it. And I think as we grapple with that, because the one other thing I'll say about this is like when we do these circles, there are times where you can feel the force of the state as like a magnetic pull, right? Where you know people know the thing they're promising, if they don't do it, they're gonna be locked up, and they have to run it through that lens. And there are times, because circles are what they are, where people are just facing the person they harmed. And they are rooted in that thing in themselves that connects to that thing in the other person. And something about that magnetic pull it's like the magnet gets turned the other way for a second, and people can just be with each other for a minute in the way we would be in best relationship. And we have that ability, right? We have that capacity. And so I think the question for programs that work close to the state are like, how do you account for the proximity of the state? How do you be honest about its distorting functions? And what kind of things do you put in place that for a minute, like demagnetize that room so that people can be their whole human selves? And for me, that's the place of like grappling and exploration and hard work with one another that I'm most interested in doing together.
Ooh. See what I said about quotables? I hope somebody took some notes and they sent them my way. Thank you so much. I also love questions about contradiction and tensions. Why? Because they are just part of life. Contradictions are a part of life, and to pretend that they are not there and to either take some kind of purity politic position, which honestly a lot of us are not in a position to do, is delusional. I'm just going to say that. But when is it that we have a hard line? And when is it that we are standing in whatever it was, shit and glass? I think those are very, very important discernments to make, and I'm grappling with that myself. And maybe what I'll do is share a little bit about how I live that in my life, but what I think the question is for us to think collectively how we have an organization like Common Justice, which is not delusional about why they are working with the state. They know what abolition is. They have, I believe, their eyes on the horizon of abolition, but this is one step on the way. And how does that contrast with another organization that might do similar things to Common Justice, that think that they are very savvy to be in this fine line, we can do this, this is good reform, don't bother us, we know what we're doing, oh wait, yay, a whole bunch more money is coming our way. Good, because we're doing good work. We can make more organizations like ourselves that don't know what we're doing, that don't understand abolition, or will go to an abolitionist conference and say, isn't abolition cool, but we're going to still do what we're doing, pretend it's abolitionist even? So do you hear me? There is a thing that's happening right now that is, I did write something 20 years after VAWA, which was, I had to do my little counting, I believe it was 2014, which was seeing restorative justice actually catching on. Like this alternatives, restorative justice, we need to do something different, catching on. And I just saw it coming out. I was like, there's a tsunami coming out. It's starting to roll this way. It hasn't come yet, but there's like an openness. And it's not gonna be a tsunami that we're like surfing and swimming and like playing with the dolphins. It's a tsunami that's gonna run over us, that's gonna take our good work and make sure that we're cast a sea afloat. We're gonna break our little boats up, and we're gonna be distant memories, if even that. That's what they want. So how do we strategically plan right now collectively for what is happening right now? The tsunami is here. It's here. Are you getting the RFPs for the restorative justice program? What did they look like? Are you getting our RFPs from the funders? What is that looking like? I am in California right now. I am actually specifically where, even though I do transformative justice work or creative interventions or community-based interventions to violence, very not sexy. That work is absolutely not police work. We are not working with law enforcement. I have started doing things that are more kind of in that trajectory of Western restorative justice, I think. And I know, the language, obviously, just from everybody talking, is very imprecise and problematic. But I have been doing that work in part because it was done on a little bit more big scale, systematic. A lot of the work of transformative justice, y'all who are doing that, it's kind of like, it's a little, what is it, DIY? It's like, it's a little, at least the way it was kind of like, okay, we have these principles. We don't really, what's the method here? And so I personally was curious to take something that had a little bit more of a trajectory, but we specifically said this is not about the cops. This is not non-law enforcement, absolutely. And if it's going to be, then, cut me out, I'm not going to do it. What happened is we actually did get some funding to do such a thing. We have been trying it. I wrote a little report on it, and I changed the title so many times. It was a very boring title each time. But I finally put non-law enforcement at the front of the title, so nobody could think, oh, this is restorative justice. Oh, we could do this with the prosecutor's office. No, this is a non-law enforcement, and I knew it was important to put those words there in front of restorative justice because there are too many people that aren't making the distinction right now.
That's right. That's right.
And it's flowing, and I see it over and over again. Oh, I love this alternative. I love this. Oh, please. Oh. And then they are telling me, or they are going to apply for money that is prosecutor specific. And there's something about not just the thing, but how much space it takes up, how much money goes there. Right. That is meant to wipe us out. Yeah. Take the fact, what happened with this program, the Chat Project, was they went and testified at the local government, county government, saying, y'all, we're doing restorative justice, we're doing it with domestic violence and sexual violence. What y'all said was dangerous and you shouldn't do it. Not to say there aren't safety concerns, yes, there are. But we are doing it. People applause. What they do, they went and made a pocket of county funding that was only to train law enforcement to do restorative justice. They took that beautiful work, those beautiful words, the compelling energy to move forward, and they used it to only train, nothing else. 100%. We will give you this money if you will waste your time to turn away from your work with the community and come and train police, prosecutors to do restorative justice so that we can start getting that money and we can do it and we can learn from everything you did. And you just wasted your time, so you're not going to be, spending your energy even serving the community. Do you see what I mean? This is happening big time right now. What did I see next? The state OES, Office of Emergency Services, what they call in California. They get money from the Office of Violence and Crime. They decide, wow, we really like this restorative justice, domestic violence and sexual violence. The thing that we have been talking about for, since Insight, since Critical Resistance, since before then. And again, only for prosecutor-led restorative justice. All this money went out. This RFP went out. What's happening on the federal level? Office of Violence Against Women. Now, what happened there is we had some reform-minded feminists, and we fought them, saying, don't even put it in there. Please don't put it in there. Oh, we hear that you love this idea. Don't put it in there. Oh, no, we're going to say it's non-law enforcement. Believe me, we're going to do it right. Okay, it did go in. It's now a part of the last vow. It's in legislation. And it does say restorative practices, and they define them as non-law enforcement involved. Now, what's going to go on there? I went and actually talked to people at the office, and I go, well, I did see in the legislation that you define, I was like, how many ways can I remind you? And then they went kind of like, well, and I go, what does that well mean? I don't know how y'all operate, but are you saying you're going to get pressure from somebody to do that, whether you like it or not? Are you saying that you're going to have a tiny little pocket of money here for non-law enforcement? Meanwhile, Office of Violence and Crime apparently is going to put the law enforcement in there and squeeze us out, and we'll be forgotten in 5 years after that money is over, and it'll all be law enforcement. You see, this is what's happening right now. So you could see it coming. It's happening right now. How are we going to be smart about it? Is it smart at any time to take that money and steal it away? I don't know. Yeah. It is only smart, though, if we talk together collectively and we know that we have a strategy and underlying values that are aligned around what that is going towards. Do you know what I mean? Because in some ways I was like, do we just take the money so that other people don't take that money? And then just whatever, pay your folks for a little bit. But don't fool yourself to think you're taking that money and doing some glorious work, because I don't think it's going to happen. Anyways, tensions and contradictions, that's what I had to say today.
I had one job, and that was to keep us on schedule, which I never do, if you know me. So I apologize. But we've got one question left and not much time, so I'm going to ask that y'all keep it to 3 minutes each. I'm so sorry. And it's our juiciest question. But I'd love to hear from each of you. What does it mean to see justice? Where are there possibilities? And Kumi, let's start with you.
Yes, that is a great question. Another visual from the NTA. So I was listening to your responses. A greater contradiction and possibility and tension that Healing Justice has with the overall movement is a lot of the rhetoric that Healing Justice created is being used by other forms of justice without the right credit, right? And that affects the justice that you give, because the people that you're essentially healing are not getting the full expansion or the full extent of their justice. I don't know what my leaders did. My leadership, my legacy is community specific, and my leaders experienced our struggle first. So if I don't know their names, I don't know what they did in the same city where I'm from. I just know myself as an offender or a crime survivor, and no other community role outside of that. What kind of justice is really being served, and to who? That makes the state more comfortable. That does not make my family more comfortable. That makes the school more comfortable, which is really a training ground for prison, and not just how it sets up, how it looks, but they estimate the number of people who are going to prison by third and fourth grade literacy rates, right? Mm-hmm. But you're really saying even before that, you were in an institution that neglected your rights. So in kindergarten, you were being treated as if you were going to go to prison. That's what you're really saying. So the second part of the NTA, and this is a training that's open to everybody, so as far as collaborating and collectivizing our efforts, see anybody with a H.O.L.L.A shirt, right? The direct flow exhibits how we 7 neighborhoods, or now 10 neighborhoods, local communities, contribute to legislation, right? We pay taxes and we vote. They then give a budget to the governor's office, who has 20 departments, but majority of that budget goes to the Department of Corrections instead of the services that go back to our communities, right? But let's not forget, the prison is a community institution, because majority of our people go there and return, right, with a high recidivism rate. So with your attention, Ms. Kim, about funding. Eddie Ellis, before like the 2000s, expressed restorative justice does not, give all the justice that it has to give, because we don't only exist in offender crime survivor roles, right? We're somebody's children, and we're all victims of crime generative factors. We're all victims of the environment that we're in. We're non-traditional people in traditional institutions that have been neglected and willingly neglected for generations. So now not not just I am set up to be miseducated or underemployed. And actually the first crime generating factor is racism that plays the system like this, right? So racism says that my family will break down in a certain way, most likely the leadership, because the parents are the ones that are being arrested, as well as the youth, right? And with that, I'm already subjected to a lesser amount of education and employment, so I have to hustle now, or depend on the state through welfare. But the older I get, I have more responsibilities. So the little hustles I was doing when I was a teenager are no longer working for my bills now as an adult. So I have to actually commit a crime to make money, right? And majority of our people that are imprisoned, every Black movement has been done for economic means. We have been constantly trying to survive the system, right? So now we have to say, do we need to merge, or do we just need to give more truth to what's already happening? Healing justice doesn't just serve the Black and brown community, it serves everybody, right? It serves everybody in any kind of room. So we need funding to go to the services instead of Department of Corrections. So that's outside the prosecutor's office, outside of the courtrooms, and even within them, who's talking to the judges and the lawyers and educating them on NTA? So when we bring our people that are saying that we committed a crime and we don't know any better, I'm now in front of leadership that knows better. Why is the premise to punish me instead of educate me? Why do you want to rehabilitate me instead of empower me? Right, and I'm going to close it up, but this is tied to education, and education is tied to our history, and that history has been silenced. So a future possibility is like, yes, we all have to be educated on the same analysis and pedagogy, so we're moving forward in the same spirit. We can't keep organizing ourselves individually, coming together, discussing our efforts, and not collectivizing those efforts. So,
I just want to set the record straight. Peacemaking is not ADR. I mean, it's not. It's ODR, Original Dispute Resolution. Always remember that. Sometimes people say, well, is peacemaking like restorative justice? Or how does the healing justice fit in? What about transformative justice? If you look at what I was trying to say, I don't have enough time to explain the whole framework to how the peacemaking works when it comes to applications of the tradition and custom law of the Navajo. You can see that, everything goes back to what the holy people have established as custom law, traditional law. They never changed, they're not man-made. That's why we call it original dispute resolution. It's immutable. So, possibilities, it already happened. There was a grandmother who was arrested for theft, and she was being accused that she was not taking care of her livestock. It so happens that somebody else's horse roamed into her herd, and she was arrested the next day. So at trial, this is, we're talking about 1930s. She was at trial, and none of us could speak English. But yet, we were told we had a person who would evaluate how well we're doing in terms of practicing and learning the American law and process. So guess what? The judge who was presiding over the hearing spoke Navajo. Corolla edi banahadot isto arole banyatadoltia. That's how he spoke. Did you understand that? Good. I mean, what did the BIA, the Indian agent who was supposed to ensure that we're moving toward civilization, but we're speaking Navajo. And what happened? It was a criminal case. And everybody spoke. It ran just like a chapter meeting or town hall meeting. And she was no conviction. All she did is apologize in Navajo. In Navajo, they said, "Biga," means good. Go home. So that's what we're talking about, possibilities. And so what else is going on to make possibilities work? We have 500 Navajo Nation bar members. It's not state bar association. We're talking about Navajo. 500, most of which are non-Indians, and they're running the show. They're saying that when we take the bar exam for 8 hours, it's got to be a model at the state bar. So now we said no more. So now if you are a non-Indian, you have to take the bar in the Navajo language, the Navajo culture. Some people don't like it. The city lawyer says, "I'm not going to take it." I said, "That's okay. You don't take the bar. You're not a member. You don't practice here." So this is out of respect for the people. So what are we doing? And we're beginning to teach the fundamental law course that emphasizes language and culture at where I teach, Navajo Tech University. And so the Higher Learning Commission approved the teaching of Fundamental Law 1 and Fundamental Law 2. So I think teaching, people about what is peacemaking, how does it work, who is qualifies as a peacemaker. Those kinds of questions are very, very, very useful, very valuable. Thank you.
I like good. Go home. I think a lot about when we think about seeding, like in thinking about trees and all that. One thing I think is really important we remember is we talk about trees like they just like come up from a seed, but like a seed came from another tree, right? Like it grew from a tree that fruited, that scattered what it had, that was helped by animals to move it around, right? And that's the thing. So even the things we seed come from somewhere. And trees, when they grow, I think we think about growing when we talk about like growth of this movement, we think like mammals, which we are to be fair, but we're like a tiger. You a bigger tiger, eat more prey. You a bigger whale, eat more fish, right? And like, what if we're a bigger tree instead? Because one of the things that trees do is like, as their branches grow, so too do their roots, right? Like little trees, little roots, big trees, big roots, right? And roots aren't the thing that are just there at the beginning and then you grow, right? Roots grow as you grow, right? And I think that's part of in a culture that extracts all of us from our histories, from our origins, from whoever, right? To be like, if we feel unrooted, that's not a permanent state, right? Like that we get to grow new roots all the time, and that ideally we're growing those proportionate to the branches, right? And what trees do, we've learned, and that they always knew, is like those roots then connect to one another, so they speak to each other more. And like the bigger they grow, the more connected they become in the rest of the forest. And in that communication, they warn each other. They warn each other about incoming weather. They warn each other about loggers. Like they literally send messages through root systems being like, there is a threat to our survival. And so I think when we think about growing, I think Like, we can look up, it's springtime, you know, like, we look up at these huge branches, and I think our calling is to grow more like trees than like mammals, right? Is to continue that rootedness, to reach deeper down, further out, more connected, like throughout that time. And I think there are great possibilities for us. I am very sad to not be here tomorrow, but I will be at the 20th anniversary celebration for Norris Henderson's freedom. He has been free for 20 years. And my kid, who some of you may have seen around, he's over there. Hi, baby love. He said the other day, he woke up and he said, is Uncle Norris tired from fighting for freedom for so long? And I said, I think sometimes he's tired, but I think he's doing good. And then he said to me, well, I'm not tired either, which, you know, he's almost 4. So it's a long time to be almost 4, right? You're 3 3/4. And he said, and I said, why aren't you tired? And he said, when I think about people who are not free, it wakes me up. And when I think about people who are free, it wakes me up. And so I think the possibilities are whatever we decide they're going to be.
Okay, I'm not even going to compete with that all, but I hope people are energized by this, these last 3 panels, because where does possibility lie? Obviously, Kumi made my hair stand on end, and that's a good thing. And but if you feel like you're part of possibility, raise your hand and go out and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much.
When I think about people who are not free, it wakes me up too. Wisdom from babies. Everyone, thank you so much for joining the afternoon plenary. There are breakout sections next, but before, if you see somebody in a teal shirt, I want you to look them in the eyes and thank them for all of the hard work that they have done to be able to bring everybody here, to be able to make sure that you are comfortable, to make sure that you feel seen, to make sure that our panelists are taken care of. So thank you to the staff at the Center for Justice, to the Beyond the Bars fellows, and to everybody whose hard work went into this day. I've said about 1,000 times today, mofos, put on your masks, right? Don't make us be these people. We don't want to be those people walking behind you, telling you put on your mask, annoying you, and carrying on. So as much as you can, put your damn mask on. Thank you. All right. So plenaries are on level C. They are on level 3. And they are on level 4. Look inside your programs, and you'll have a listing of the panels that are available. Thank you so much, and we will see you in and around the building and tomorrow morning.
Freedom Rock.
I was in skinny. I was in skinny. I was I mean, I was 7:15. I was until 5:30. I was like,